There comes a moment in every soul's journey when silence becomes unbearable. Not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence that lives inside you. The one that begins after people start to disappear. You tell yourself it's just a life. People grow apart, priorities change. But somewhere deeper, in the place words never reach, you feel it. A quiet unraveling, as if the universe has started to rearrange itself around your awakening. When you begin to grow, truly grow, you don't just change your habits, you change your frequency. And the truth is, not everyone is meant to rise with you. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Growth demands separation, not always from others, but from the illusions you built with them, the illusions of who you needed to be, to belong, the masks you wore so they would stay. You don't lose people when you grow. You lose the version of yourself that attracted them, and that loss, that quiet death, feels like grief, because it is. When you stop abandoning your truth to be accepted, you stop vibrating at the frequency of pretense, and everything built on pretense begins to fall away. It's not betrayal, it's purification. The shadow you've ignored, the one that hides behind every smile, behind every polite silence, behind every "I'm fine," that shadow begins to move. It begins to speak in the language of endings. It tells you the truth you tried to avoid, that growth requires loneliness, that awakening is not light breaking through the window, but fire burning down the walls. You start to see things you never saw before. How often your kindness was self-erasure. How many of your relationships were built on fear, not love. And how silence, your silence, became the currency of peace. But peace, bought with self-abandonment, is not peace at all. It's a slow suffocation of the soul. As you wake, you feel the distance widening. People you once shared everything with now feel like strangers standing at the edges of your becoming. And in that stillness, something ancient stirs, a whisper that says, "You are not losing them. You are meeting yourself." And that is where the real story begins. The hardest part of growth is not the light that enters you. It's the darkness that resists it. Because when the light of awareness arrives, everything false begins to tremble. You start to see the small lies that held your world together, the smiles that were masks, the laughter that hid exhaustion, the relationships that fed your loneliness instead of healing it. You begin to see how much of your life was shaped by fear. Fear of being left, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being truly seen. You told yourself you were kind, accommodating, peaceful. But beneath those virtues was something else. A quiet terror of rejection. You learned to please, so you wouldn't be abandoned. You learned to agree, so you wouldn't be shamed. You learned to dim your fire, so you wouldn't burn the fragile comfort around you. Carl Jung called this the repression of the shadow, the exile of everything we judge as unworthy within ourselves. But what you repress does not die. It hides, it waits, and it builds a secret life beneath the surface, waiting for the moment to emerge. That emergence is never gentle. You begin to feel restless in rooms you once called home. Conversations start to sound hollow. Familiar faces feel distant. The life you built starts to feel like a costume you've outgrown. You look in the mirror and realize you've been acting, playing the role others needed, not the person you truly are. It's a devastating recognition, because awakening doesn't just reveal truth. It also exposes all the years you lived without it. In those moments, It's tempting to run back, to apologize for changing, to shrink again so that love feels safe. But you can't unknow what you now see. Growth is a door that only opens one way, and so you try to hold both worlds, the new awareness and the old attachments, but they begin to tear you apart. You feel guilty for outgrowing the familiar, ashamed for wanting something deeper, and afraid that solitude might mean failure. The world tells you that good people don't leave, that loyalty means staying where love began. But sometimes, staying means dying in slow motion. You realize that love built on denial is a fragile empire, and every empire built on illusion eventually crumbles. When you grow, you threaten the foundation of those who haven't. Your honesty becomes confrontation. Your silence becomes distance. Your healing becomes their loss. And so, they pull away, not because they hate you, but because your becoming mirrors what they're not ready to face. You begin to understand that people don't disappear when you change. They disappear because your truth no longer hides in the same darkness. And for some, that light is too much. So you walk through days that feel like funerals without coffins. You grieve not only the people, but the versions of yourself that needed them. This is the sacred disintegration, the moment when your inner architecture begins to collapse. The false self dies, and the shadow, the one you buried, rises to take its place. It does not come to destroy you. It comes to return you to wholeness. And as you stand in the ruins of what you once called your life, you realize the pain was never punishment. It was invitation, an invitation to stop pretending, to stop pleasing, and to finally step into the quiet terror of your own authenticity. That is where truth begins. And that is where the shadow starts to speak. There is a moment in every awakening when the pain begins to make sense. Not because it fades, but because it reveals its purpose. When Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, he did not mean evil. He meant the unacknowledged, the forgotten, the denied, the parts of us buried beneath shame and social armor. The shadow is the child you silenced, the anger you condemned, the grief you dressed in smiles. It is everything that needed love, but met judgment instead. You spend your youth running from it, calling it weakness, darkness, sin. But as you grow, you start to see what you repress does not disappear. It governs you in secret. It shapes your choices, your relationships, your identity. The shadow doesn't vanish. It wears your face when you're not watching. It is the sudden jealousy you can't explain, the resentment that erupts in moments of stress, the fear that whispers you are never enough. These are not flaws. They are messages. Each one points to an exiled fragment of your soul. You begin to understand the paradox. The more you reject your darkness, the more power it gains over you. The more you deny your pain, the deeper it burrows into the unconscious, waiting to emerge in disguise. As addiction, projection, or cruelty you can't justify. Jung called this the shadow's revenge. It is not punishment. It is the psyche's way of restoring balance, because the soul cannot bear fragmentation forever. And so, the revelation arrives. You cannot heal by cutting parts of yourself away. You heal by remembering what you abandoned. To integrate the shadow is to look into the mirror and see the whole of who you are. Not just the polished reflection you offer the world, but the cracks, the hunger, the sorrow, the rage. And instead of turning away, you whisper, "I see you." This act of seeing, of witnessing without judgment, is the beginning of wholeness, because only what is brought into light can transform. Imagine your psyche as a great cathedral. For years, you've lit only one side, the side that smiles, achieves, pleases. The other half remained in darkness where your fears and failures knelt in silence. Integration is not about tearing down the dark. It's about lighting the whole cathedral. The light does not destroy the shadows. It reveals their shape, their purpose. It shows you that the darkness was never against you. It was the part of you begging to be loved enough to be seen. When you face your shadow, you reclaim power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that frees you from yourself. Because once you've met your own darkness, no one else can use it against you. The world loses its control over a soul that has looked within and found peace with its own abyss. That is the essence of Jung's philosophy, that what you fear within yourself is the gatekeeper to your transformation. And here lies the secret most never learn. The people who disappear when you grow. They are not the story's tragedy. They are its mirror. Each one represented a piece of your unconscious, a projection of something you refused to own. When you grow, those projections dissolve. You no longer need them to carry your hidden truths. Some carried your unhealed wounds, others your guilt, some your need for approval. And when you integrate those parts, the relationship loses its necessity. It's not rejection, it's alchemy. You are no longer drawn to what once wounded you, because the wound itself has found its voice. The lesson completes its cycle, and in the quiet aftermath of understanding, you feel something new, a kind of stillness. Not emptiness, but space. Space for truth, space for peace, space for a life not built on pretense, but presence. For the first time, you no longer need people to validate your light because you've befriended your dark. And that is what liberation feels like. When you finally stop running from yourself, life begins to rearrange. Not because the world changes, but because your perception does. The same people, the same places, the same quiet mornings. They all look different when seen through the eyes of one who has met their own shadow. Integration is not a sudden awakening. It is a slow remembering, a daily act of courage, to sit with your truth without the armor of performance. At first it feels unnatural. You've spent years hiding pain behind productivity, confusing peace with silence and mistaking approval for love. Now you begin to question everything. You notice how often you say yes when your soul screams no. How often you smile to avoid conflict, even when that conflict could set you free. How often you mistake emotional numbness for calm. Transformation begins with awareness, the simple, radical act of noticing. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." To integrate the shadow is to take responsibility for the unseen forces shaping your destiny. It starts small. You pause before reacting. You listen before blaming. You breathe before running. And in those pauses, you hear the quiet voice beneath the noise. The one that says, "Stay. Stay with the discomfort. Stay with the truth. Stay with the parts of you that ache for understanding." It's not easy. Your mind will resist. It prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom. But every time you choose awareness over avoidance, you reclaim a piece of your power. In relationships, this changes everything. You stop seeking saviors and start meeting mirrors. You realize that love is not about finding someone who completes you. but someone who reflects what you have yet to embrace. And sometimes that reflection is too honest to keep. When you live with awareness, you can no longer tolerate the games that once sustained you. You no longer chase attention. You embody presence. You no longer argue to win. You speak to understand. You no longer cling to people who drain you. You honor their exit as part of your evolution. Growth stops being about addition and becomes about subtraction. Not gaining more, but needing less. Less approval, less noise, less illusion. And in this stillness, you begin to lead differently. True leadership is not control, it is clarity. The person who has faced their own shadow no longer projects it onto others. They no longer need to dominate because they have learned mastery. Not over others, but over the self. Humility becomes your strength. Compassion becomes your language, and solitude becomes your teacher. Because solitude, once feared, now feels sacred. It's no longer loneliness. It's alignment, the place where you commune with what is real. This is the paradox of growth. The more whole you become, the fewer people you need to hold you together. And yet the love that remains, the love that survives the shedding, is purer than anything that came before. For in wholeness, you stop using love as a refuge and start offering it as a gift. You love not to fill your emptiness, but to share your fullness. You forgive not to forget the pain, but to release yourself from its gravity. And slowly, the world responds. Where once there was chaos, you find rhythm. Where once there was fear, you find curiosity. Where once there was resistance, you find flow. This is what it means to integrate, not to escape the darkness, but to dance with it, until both light and shadow move as one. And in that harmony, you finally understand. You never lost anyone. You simply outgrew the version of yourself that needed them to feel whole. When the storm finally passes, you are left with quiet, not the heavy silence of loneliness, but the kind that feels like dawn after a long night. The air feels different, lighter, still. You begin to realize that peace was never about fixing the world, but making peace with the world within. You have faced the shadow, and it no longer frightens you. You have watched people disappear, and it no longer breaks you, because somewhere along the way, you discovered something deeper than belonging. You found understanding. Carl Jung wrote that the purpose of life is not to be good, but to be whole. And wholeness is not the absence of darkness, but the presence of light within it. You begin to live differently, not chasing, not proving, not performing, just being. Your soul moves slower now, not because it's tired, but because it's finally at ease. You understand that people come and go, not as punishments, but as teachers. Each one revealed a fragment of your own unconscious, a mirror for what you were ready to see. They did not leave because they failed you. They left because their part of your story was complete. And perhaps this is what it means to grow, to love without clinging, to let go without resentment, to remember without returning. There's a quiet nobility in that, the kind Marcus Aurelius spoke of. The still strength of a soul that no longer demands the world to bend to its will. You start to smile at things that once hurt. You thank the endings that once shattered you, because now you understand. Without those endings, you would never have met yourself. And when you meet yourself, truly, you no longer fear losing anyone, because the love you were searching for in others has finally come home. So if people disappear as you grow, Do not chase the ghosts of your past. Light does not apologize for leaving the darkness behind. Stand in the glow of your own becoming and whisper, with quiet certainty, "Those who are meant for my light will find me in it." And then walk on into the stillness, into the mystery, into the wholeness that was waiting for you all along.